amazing parents. Hey, it's Jen. I'm an Anat Baniel Method practitioner. Welcome to the Facebook group. If you're new, so we have a few new faces here, so welcome. I haven't done a Q&A in a little bit, so I thought I'd pop in here and answer some of your questions. So before you join the group, there's a little section to ask your most burning questions about the Anat Baniel Method. And so I've just pulled a few of those out, and we'll take a look at some of those questions a little bit more in depth. So the first question is, how do small steps help with the bigger moves later on? So when we're talking about the larger milestones like sitting and standing and even rolling over, what do the small movements have to do with it? So if you've ever taken your child to an Anat Baniel Method practitioner and watched, you're like, what are they doing? They're moving so slow. The movements are so small. How is that helpful in my child coming into sitting? How is that helpful in my child learning to crawl? Okay, so a lot of our kids, my daughter was like this as well. She lay on the floor completely still for about the first 6 months of her life. Her brain was missing out on all of the random movements that neurotypical babies do. So most neurotypical babies have random movements of their arms flailing, their legs kicking, there's random movements. And what's going on there is their brains are self-initiating an experience to collect sensory information. So they're experiencing their world, collecting sensory information, rich information, and their brains take in that incoming information and organize it into something useful. So babies' brains are first learning by flailing their arms around. They're learning where their hand is in space, where their arm is in space. How do you move that limb, that hand, under the force of gravity? And it all starts as random, but as the brain gathers up more experience and more information from those random movements, all of a sudden they can organize it in a way to make it intentional, to start bringing the hand to the mouth and sucking the thumb. So instead of like hitting their head or the floor or their sides, they're gathering up that information and organizing it into something useful. So that's what brains do. Brains take in incoming information and organize it into something useful, something functional, like those big milestones, rolling over, coming to sitting, standing, etc. But a lot of our kids with special needs, because of a brain injury or a genetic disorder, miss out on millions and millions and millions of experiences of creating those rich sensory experiences. So they're just kind of, if you think of the brain like a map, they're missing huge gaps of their map, of their body. They don't have the experience of moving their tiny little pinky up against their knee. They've missed out on millions and millions of tiny pieces that create the larger movements. Okay, so I hope that sort of makes sense. It's like, well, that's a testament actually as to how smart our kids are, how amazing the brains are, that even without those rich sources of information, some of our kids can still piece together a way to come into standing, to come into walking, even though they didn't experience all those millions of pieces of information. And some of them are really unaware of where their foot is, where their knee is, how their ankle relates to the other parts of their bodies. So our brains are unconsciously gathering information of how our bodies move through space. And we need all of that information to create bigger movements and more options. So I hope that makes sense. An analogy that I always think of is you can build a house with just the frame and the siding and a roof, and it looks like a house. But if you go in to the house and there's no floor, there's no furniture, there's no kitchen, there's no plumbing, how functional is the house? So from the outside, it might look like a house. It might look like walking or standing, but because they're missing a ton of information, because the house is missing a ton of of tiny little details. How functional is the house? How many options do you have to live in that house? So, for instance, my daughter somehow managed to learn to walk eventually. She was about 2 when she first learned how to walk. And it was before I discovered the Anat Baniel Method. And I have no idea how she learned how to walk. She could walk, but she had no idea how to fall safely. She didn't know how to put her hands out to fall. So she didn't know how to step up on a curb for years. She's probably about 4 or 5 before she could step up onto a curb. So it looked like walking, and it was walking, but she had very little options in how she could walk because she was missing huge pieces of how her own experience of how her body moved through the world. Her brain didn't know that she had a big toe and a baby toe, and how to stabilize under uneven ground. So she's missing that extra information. She was just missing. So that's what ABM gives our kids' brains, is all of that really rich quality information that they might be missing. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. Okay, so the next question is, will this help my son advance more with his movements and therapy? Okay, so short answer, yes. Most of the kids that I see and I work with, they end up with better balance, better coordination, better sleep, more engagement with the world, an increase in milestones, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, it will help your son advance with his movements and therapy. I think the biggest thing I found that's helpful with the Anat Baniel Method is to use the 9 essentials, to use kind of the essence of what this therapy is and incorporate it into your everyday life or other exercises that you might be doing at home. So things like slowing down, things like adding in variation, things like bringing awareness, their own awareness to their own body, how their own body moves. So you're connecting them to themselves. That's really kind of the magical part of it and the key piece of it, because this isn't a movement therapy. This is a movement therapy to access the brain. So we're looking for how to access the brain, how to turn on your child's learning switch and brain so they can learn new things. And we happen to do that through slow, gentle movements. So it's a different way to look at therapy. It's not a movement therapy. It's a movement therapy so they can learn to accelerate their own learning. Okay, so I hope that's sort of helpful. So you can incorporate some of these methods into any therapy, as long as the therapy is respectful to the child. And there's certain therapies that that don't really go hand in hand with the Anat Baniel Method, and there's certain therapies that do really go well with the Anat Baniel Method. Some certain types of therapies would be cranial sacral therapy, floor time, sunrise is a really good one. Also, I'm trying to think of the Muscatova method is also pairs quite nicely with the Anat Baniel Method. So you're looking for therapies that really respect where the child is at and come from a learning-based perspective. So that's what ABM is more of, is a learning-based movement therapy. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. And what's the last question here? How intense will the sessions and at-home therapy be? So if you are seeing your local ABM practitioner, if you're lucky enough to have a local ABM practitioner near you, that's fantastic. If you need help to find one, just let me know in the comments and I can help where you're located, and I can help you find one near you. So if you're seeing your local ABM practitioner, most of us work off of grouping the lessons together. So usually it's 30 to 45 minutes long, and we like to do either 2 a day in 2 to 3 to 5 days in a row versus seeing the child just once a week. So we find kind of grouping the lessons together allows us to access the brain a lot easier. So if you only see the child once a week, often what happens is the brain just slips back into habitual patterns, habitual movement patterns, and it just makes it harder to work on top of the changes that you see in that first lesson. So grouping the lessons together is often, you'll see greater results kind of thing. So that's why it is important to be able to support our kids at home in between seeing your local practitioner, because there's just so much you guys can do at home to support your kids. And a lot of us don't have local practitioners nearby, and it is COVID as well. So there's probably less access to practitioners as well. So how do you support your child at home? Well, you can dive into Anat's 9 essentials. So I can put a link down below. I've got a few videos about the 9 essentials. And that's kind of why I started creating online movement classes, because parents do need support at home. There's a million ways that you can use slow, gentle movements with your children at home to support them in between seeing your local practitioner, right? And a lot of it's just slowing down your interactions with your child, giving them lots of opportunities for self-exploration and play, giving them lots of opportunities to connect to their own movements. And inside the movement class membership, I show you, I have over 100 videos showing you different ways, different variations of movements that you can incorporate into your everyday life to support your children at home, and to keep those brains actively learning in everyday situations. So, okay, so I hope that's helpful. And if you have other questions, just pop them down below, and we will see you in the next video. Oh, this week inside the membership, I am talking all about feet. So we are just exploring and discovering all the wonderful ways feet move, and how feet are the foundation of standing and walking, and that you can explore feet and all the wonderful things feet can do in a safe position, in the lying down position. So I will drop the link if you'd like to join us for the week down below. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Okay, talk to you later. Bye.